Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Dominaria spoilers. And good God, we have like half the set to talk about today. It feels like we just have a million cards, Wizards making up for the slow trickle of spoilers last week, and we're getting it all now, which means we gotta jump right into it, and we gotta try to keep the pace up on these cards, or we're gonna end up with like an hour-long video, which I'd like to avoid. So let's jump into it, starting with one of my favorite cards from the set, and thanks to Wizards being super cool, our official exclusive preview card over at MTG Goldfish, Naban, Dean of Iteration. So before I talk about this card, I'm not going to go super deep on it, so make sure to check out the spoiler article. We have deck lists and tons of synergies to talk about, so check out the spoiler article. I'll link it in the description. But Naban, Dean of Iteration, it's basically Wizard Panharmonicon. 2 mana, you get a 2/1, double triggers your wizards when they enter the battlefield. Actually a slight twist on Panharmonicon, because it triggers other things as well. Like if a wizard entering the battlefield causes any of your permanents to trigger, it's going to trigger another time. But the simplest way to think about Naban is basically Wizard Panharmonicon on a sweet, efficient 2/1 body. So in Standard, we have some sweet things to copy. Silvergill Adept, drawing extra cards, Direfleet Ravager can kill the opponent. Probably the best options though is some sort of like blue-white wizard deck where you have Sunscourge Champion for tons of life gain. Champion of Wits is one of the best Panharmonicon cards. If you go crazy and get into green, Resilient Kenra can be a lot of damage. So in Standard, we can build a deck that is not only a Naban deck, but also a Panharmonicon deck. Throw in some wizards, use Naban as an extra, cheaper, more efficient Panharmonicon, and just go to town, double, triple, quadrupling up our enter the battlefield triggers on our wizards. In Modern, there's some sweet options as well. Venser Shaper's Savant is kind of a cool combo. You can cast it, double bounce permanents, or you can cast it, bounce a permanent, and bounce it itself, so then you can cast it again, keep doing that to just tax your opponent out of the game. Reflector Mage, great against creature decks. Snapcaster Mage is really insane. Probably the best enter the battlefield trigger in all of Modern, and it just happens to be a wizard, so you can cast this with the Naban out, and you're able to like get back a Thoughtseize and also Thought Scour or Serum Visions or something. Just so much value there. And one of the cool things about Naban in specific is it's different than Panharmonicon in the sense that I don't think you have to build around it as much. With Panharmonicon, since you're skipping your 4th turn to play Panharmonicon, you really got to make sure your deck is overloaded on enter the battlefield triggers, because Panharmonicon has to be good enough to catch you up after skipping your 4th turn. Naban, on the other hand, it's already a Dark Confidant. Like a 2-mana 2/1 is already a fine deal, a fine body. We see tons of creatures with those stats that are playable, so I don't think you have to go as crazy building around it. If you play Naban, you get a decent attacker/blocker that's relatively on curve anyway, and then if you can double up a few triggers along the way, it's going to be more than worth the value. Naban also has some sweet potential for Commander, thanks to Anala Archmage Ritualist, which is kind of a Wizard Panharmonicon from the command zone. The super sweet thing about this, though, is they work really well together. So you cast a wizard, you pay 1, you get a token copy of that wizard. Both of those token copies, assuming it's like a Venser or something that has an enter the battlefield ability, are going to double trigger thanks to Naban, Deed of Iteration, and then you just go super, super crazy, do tons of sweet things, so great synergies there. Plus there's some cool wizards to double up in Commander. Prime Speaker Zagata for all the card draw, Dualcaster Mage, gotta be some sweet combo there, Disciple Ebolas for all the card draw and life gain. So overall, I am super excited for Naban, Deed of Iteration. It looks like one of my favorite cards. We will be playing it in Standard, maybe in Modern, probably in Commander as well. So again, if you want a fuller breakdown and deck list and all that stuff, make sure to follow the link in the description to the spoiler article. Again, thanks to Wizards for letting us show it off. Anyway, we got a ton more to talk about, so let's move on. Next on our list, we have an Elder Demon, Demon Lord Belzenlock. And this card, I mean, we can't get away from it. It's another great Panharmonicon card. 6 mana, you get a 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to essentially draw a card. You exile cards until you hit a non-land card. You get that card in your hand. However, if that card has a converted mana cost of 4 or more, you get to repeat the process. So you could potentially draw 2 or 3 cards. Plus, you're getting a 6/6 flying trample body, which is already a really good deal. It reminds me a little bit of some cards we've seen in the past, but probably upgraded, like Hopful Fed, Reaper of the Abyss, Tenant the Harvester. 6/6s for 6 with flying are already a good deal. Demon Lord Belzenlock is even better because it it has Trample as well, and none of those cards just directly replace themselves when they enter the battlefield. So this card seems like it has a lot of potential to be kind of a finisher on the top end of a control deck, of a mid-range deck in Standard, because you're getting a good rate anyway, plus it's replacing itself, and if you get a little bit lucky, you can replace itself multiple times. You draw 2 cards or 3 cards, and then it's just an absurd deal if you get a little bit lucky with your spin. And that doesn't even include the potential of just going really deep, Tomer style, like on Commander Clash, where you played 6-drop Tribal. If you played a Bells and Lock in this deck, you're probably going to kill yourself, but you're also just going to like draw your entire deck because everything's so much mana. Even in Standard, we played the really bad 6-drop Tribal deck, and while there are cards that are less than 4 converted mana costs in the deck, Gift of Paradise, Harness Lightnings, we have a lot of expensive stuff, which means the odds are not that bad that we're going to draw 2, maybe draw 3 with our Demon Lord Bells and Lock. And when you're drawing more than 1 card, it is a really ridiculous deal. Even just drawing 1 is a good deal, but drawing 2 or 3 is just an absolutely insane deal for its mana cost. And you can also kind of go around breaking Demon Lord Bells and Lock by playing things that are cheaper than their converted mana cost suggests. Like Tasigur, technically 6 mana, so it gets you another free spin with your Demon Lord Bells and Lock, but really you're going to be casting it for 1 mana most of the time, 2 mana most of the time. Elder Deep Fiend with a merge, even like the affinity mechanic with Mirror Enforcer. So overall, I'm super excited for Demon Lord Bells and Lock. Seems like a commander staple. You can build some really janky decks around it in Standard. Great top end for Jund mid-range, various black control decks. This card, super sweet, super powerful, good rate, and potentially really, really strong when you get a little bit lucky with your spins. Next up, we have Squee the Immortal, which is a callback to the original Squee Goblin Nabob. So Squee the Immortal, it just keeps coming back. It is going to be really, really hard to deal with this card forever because you can cast it from your graveyard or from the exile zone. So it's this 2-1 that just never, ever, ever goes away. They path it, it comes back. They kill it, it comes back. You block and chump with it, it comes back. It's coming back no matter what. So obviously the biggest combo with this deck is, with this card, is that it's another piece that works with the food chain combo. I don't know if more cards you can cast from exile really change the math on food chain. You already have Eternal Scourge, you already have Mist Hollow Griffin, so I don't know if that actually changes things. As far as like Standard is concerned, it's really hard to make sense of where Squee fits. It's sort of reminiscent of like Dread Wanderers, Resembling Skeletons, Bloodghast, but the big difference is Squee seems more like a defensive card. Like it blocks right away, it's not coming back with haste or anything like that, so it seems like something you play kind of defensively to just keep getting it back, keep blocking your opponent's stuff, making it really hard for your opponent to kill you, although it is definitely worth pointing out that being legendary is a concern. However, it can kind of do like a Scrap Heap Scrounger imitation. Lacking the 3rd power is kind of a problem when it comes to crewing vehicles, but it does give you another threat that just keeps coming back, so you always have something to do your crewing, and 3 mana is not a bad deal. Like, you don't need to exile creatures from your graveyard, so there's some upside over Scrap Heap Scrounger there. So we'll have to see how Squee the Immortal works out. It seems like a card that is good enough it'll show up as a 1-of in a lot of decks. It's just really annoying to ever deal with forever, and while it's not insanely powerful as a 2-1 for 3, if you're playing a deck like Mardu Vehicles, a random red deck, even like a Ramenamp red deck, I think as a 1-of it could be good enough that you can just keep getting it back, keep getting it back, keep getting it back. In multiples, it gets a little bit clunky because if you get 2 or 3 in your graveyard, you're not really generating card advantage because of the legendary problem, but I think that Squee, definitely the kind of card that could show up as a 1-of in a lot of decks, but maybe not more than that in too many. Next up, we have a reprint in Siege Gang Commander, and Siege Gang Commander is one of the better goblins for Standard. It's kind of like a Pin Karandalar almost. Enters the battlefield, you get 3 1/1 goblins, you can sack them to deal 2 damage, so you're getting a lot of power and toughness and some like reach for a pretty competitive converted mana cost. Lots of bodies on the battlefield. I think the big question for Siege Gang Commander is, do we have enough goblins right now to make Goblin Tribal work? You can't play Siege Gang just as like a top end of a mid-range deck. It's good enough like P and Karandalar on its own, but it obviously gets even better if you can play it in a Goblin deck because you can sack any Goblin to it, not just the tokens it makes. So right now, our Goblin options are a bit limited. We got Fanatical Firebrand, Rigging Runner, which are pretty good 1-drops. Wily Goblin, kind of a reasonable 2-drop. It does ramp you into Siege Gang Commander. We do know that Goblin War Chief will be making a return. We don't have the new art yet, so it hasn't been officially spoiler, but it was part of the leak. I think what we really need, though, is a Lord. That's what we're missing for Goblins to really be a thing in Standard, so we'll have to see if we get a Goblin Lord in Dominaria. If not, Goblins definitely seems like a tribe that'll get more support in Core Set 2019, so it might be that we gotta wait a couple of months for the next set to come out to get the Goblin support. But if we do get enough Goblin support, Siege Gang Commander will be a big reason why the deck is going to be powerful in Standard. We also got some more legendary uncommons. TetiOVA Benthic Druid is actually a pretty powerful card. 5 mana, you get a 3/3, and I don't know what's going on with Dominaria. There tends to be a lot of 5 mana 3/3s. I do not know the reason for that, but it's definitely interesting to see so many 5 mana 3/3s. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to gain a life and draw a card. This is basically the ultimate of Nissa Vital Force on a 5 mana creature, with a little bit of life gain thrown in for a bonus. So this kind of gives us a really cool way to generate card advantage. The important part of TetiOVA is it doesn't trigger just when you play a land, it's just when a land enters the battlefield, which means if your Nissa's renewing, Rampant Growing, Boundless Realming, you're gaining huge chunks of life, drawing tons of cards, which is drawing you more lands and more ways to get lands on the battlefield, so you can kind of like pseudo combo off. It's a little bit similar to Tireless Tracker as well. The downside is you gotta pay more up front. TetiOVA is not gonna grow into a huge threat. You gotta pay 5 mana up front to get it on the battlefield. The upside is you get the card draw for free. Like, you don't have to pay 2 to sack your clues, so it kind of works like a Tireless Tracker with a higher initial investment, but a cheaper long-term investment. So we'll have to see if TetiOVA can actually show up in Standard. I don't think it's impossible that we see a deck that wants to play it as kind of a late game card to generate a lot of value. If you can ramp into this, play it on maybe turn 4 and still have a land drop left over, so you're playing it and immediately playing a land, you know you're at least drawing 1 card and gaining a life, even if your opponent kills it. And then, like Tireless Tracker, if it sits on the battlefield, you're just going to take over the game with card advantage if this stays out for a turn or two. We also got Velduk, Keeper of the Flame, which is one of the more competitively costed legends we've seen. 3 mana, you get a 3/2, which is already a pretty fine deal. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, for each aura or equipment attached to Velduk, Keeper of Flame, you get a 3/1 elemental with haste. So you go away at the end of turn, but that represents potentially a lot of damage. In Standard, you could just play this, play your Cartouche of Zeals, your Consuming Fervors, your Swashbuckling, and potentially just hit your opponent for like 9 or 12 damage out of nowhere. And of course, if Velduk sits out on the battlefield, you're going to keep doing that again and again every single turn. Like, those auras are still going to be there, so it becomes a must deal with threat. So I'm excited to see if Velduk can actually be a build around and be competitive in Standard with some of the cheap auras that we have. In Commander, it's kind of like a really aggressive red version of Kemba. Instead of getting cats that stick around on the battlefield, you're getting these hasty elementals that are just smashing your opponent, but it's kind of similar in style and how it plays. So I think that this opens up a really cool red version of kind of like the Kemba deck, where you're trying to just get as many equipments and auras on Velduk as possible, and using it as your primary way of closing out the game. So a super cool card, really unique. I will be excited to try it in Standard. It does kind of scoop hard removal. If we had an aura that like gave hexproof, that would make Velduk insane, but right now we don't have that. So we'll have to see if it could actually catch on, but as a 3/2 for 3, it's already pretty close to being good enough, and with the build around potential, I expect that people are definitely going to try it in Standard. We also got Teshar Ancestors Apostle, which is a pretty spicy combo-y type card. So for 4 mana, you get a 2/2 flying, and then whenever you cast a historic spell, you get to reanimate a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, which kind of makes this like a Sun Titan, except you need to cast your Mishra's Bauble or some random artifact to get the value going. The first thing I thought of when I thought Teshar Ancestors Apostle is to play in some sort of modern combo deck. Is sort of like an upgraded Scrap Trawler, where you're casting all these random artifacts, you're getting back Mirror Retrievers, you're getting back Scrap Trawlers, you're sacrificing them to Crack Clan Ironworks, and just comboing off Exile and going really crazy. I'm sure there's some other sweet combos with Teshar as well. In Standard, I think it's more likely to just be a value card. Maybe there's a combo that we haven't seen yet. We're lacking some of the cheap artifacts to really go nuts with Teshar compared to in Modern, but still a super sweet sort of potentially upgraded version of Sun Titan in some ways. Obviously, it doesn't have the body of Sun Titan. I don't think it's probably as good as Sun Titan overall, but the fact that you can trigger it multiple times in the same turn, if you have like some sort of sack outlet, getting back and sacking the same creature to just go crazy in value, definitely has some sweet potential. Like getting back your Champion of Wits over and over and over again, sacking in between while you're drawing cards, casting artifacts, and casting sagas. So a really cool card. If you have some ideas for combos of how to break it, make sure to let me know, because I feel like the combo potential is there, but outside of eggs and some really janky stuff, I haven't really figured out the best way of abusing Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, but I'm sure that there is a way if we can figure it out. We also got Shally, Voice of Plenty, and this is probably one of the more powerful legends we've seen so far. For 4 mana, you get a 3/4 with flying. It gives you, planeswalkers, and other creatures you control hexproof, and you can pay a bunch of mana, including some green mana, to put a counter on each of the creatures you control. So this basically makes Shalia into a combo of like Privileged Position with Leyline of Sanctity and Gavany Township. A ton of value if it just sits out on the battlefield. Plus, it's a pretty good creature on its own. A 3/4 flyer for 4 is already a really good deal. So I think this card definitely has a chance to see standard play. Of course, it dodges some removal, Abrade and Lightning Strike, but it's worth pointing out that Shalii is legendary, so it's not like you can play 2 and just lock damage and removal out of the game altogether. So I think that Shalii kind of just like a 1 of, maybe a 2 of at most. You play it, get value out of it, protecting your stuff. If you're in white and green and playing a creature heavy deck, it's pretty much always going to be fine. The rate is good, it has flying, it dodges some removal, and it makes it so this has to eat the removal spells first. Your opponent can't kill your Verdurous Gearhulks or whatever else you're playing, because they gotta kill this creature first because it's giving everything else hexproof. So it buys you a little bit of time before your opponent can actually disrupt you, and if it sits out on the battlefield, it is going to win the game. While 6 mana to Anthem is a lot, if you got nothing going on, it's a great mana sink, and your opponent is going to have to answer this eventually, or you're just going to grow your dorks into game-winning threats and close out the game and kill your opponent that way. So I think this is one of the most push for standard legends that we've seen so far. Definitely expected to see a lot of play. Super sweet, super powerful Angel. We also got a couple more legendary sorceries. Jayas, Emulating Inferno. I mean, I guess this is fine. It has the legendary sorcery problem that we've talked about with all these, and that is you gotta have a legendary creature or planeswalker on the battlefield to even be able to cast the card, and I just don't know how hard that's gonna be. I could see that being a major sticking point. It's not like you can just stick this in Ramanan bread with your 3 or 4 Hazarats and maybe a Chandra or 2, and trust that you're gonna cast this every game. You actually really gotta build around these cards to be able to cast them. The good news is that the rate is pretty good. One of the things that's great about Jayas Emulating Inferno is it takes advantage of the upcoming change to the Planeswalker redirection rule, dealing X damage to each of up to 3 targets. Means that you can pay a bunch of mana, kill your opponent's planeswalker, like take down their Chandra, take down one of their creatures like Earthshaker Kenra, and go to your opponent's face. So you're killing a lot of stuff and damaging your opponent. So the card is definitely powerful, and even more powerful with the Planeswalker redirection rule, since you can kill a planeswalker and damage your opponent. And the rate isn't bad. Like, you start off for 3 mana getting essentially a Flames of the Firebrand that is a little bit less flexible. You got a ping, ping, ping. You can't go all the 1 target. Then you get a triple shock if you go up to 4 mana, and then a triple lightning bolt for 5 mana. So those are all really good rates. So it really just comes down to how hard is it going to be to have a legend on the battlefield? Are we going to have decks that can take advantage of these legendary sorceries, or do we find that they're just too hard to build around in standard, and that the cost of playing so many legends is too high to make the cards good? And that, I think we just got to playtest to find out. It's really hard to figure that out on paper. Definitely can't just slot this into your green-red monsters deck or your Ramanan bread deck. That's not going to work. So you definitely got to build around them. Is it good enough to build around? We'll have to wait and see once we actually start playing with the cards. Speaking of legendary sorceries, we also got Yawgmoth's Vial Offering, which is almost exactly like Jayas Emulating Inferno. The rate is great. 5 mana, you get to reanimate a creature or planeswalker and destroy a creature or planeswalker, which is a really insane deal when you consider that reanimating a creature, not even a creature or planeswalker, just a creature, is 5 mana on its own these days. Rise from the Grave, Necromantic Summoning, Fearsome Awakening. That's the going rate to just return a creature from the graveyard to the play. And this hits a creature or a planeswalker, plus you get to destroy a creature or a planeswalker. So you get a Hero's Downfall and Vraska's Contempt. That means that Yawgmoth's Vile Offering is just a really good rate for what it's doing. But again, are you going to have a legend on the battlefield to actually be able to cast it? How challenging are legendary sorceries going to be? So I think this card is definitely more push, just in terms of rate, than Jayas Emulating Inferno. Actually might be the most pushed of the legendary sorceries we've seen so far. When you just read this card, you're like, wow, that is a lot of value for 5 mana. But can we actually build decks around legendary sorceries? I don't know. I don't know how hard it's going to be. But if there's one legendary sorcery that might be worth the work, it's probably this one, because you are getting a really good deal for the 5 converted mana cost. Finally, we got a little bit of lower rarity stuff. Rana, Disciple of Grix, really cool uncommon legend. Exiles a historic card when it enters the battlefield. Then you can cast cards that are exiled with it. Then you can pay 4 tap it to exile the top card of your library. So it's like a really slow looting effect. I don't know if this will see play in Standard. Probably fun to build around in Brawl or even Commander. Kind of a cool way to reuse your sagas, which are going to run out. So if you're playing kind of maybe an Esper Saga deck or something, maybe this can be the Eternal Witness for your sagas to get it back and reuse them again. Speaking of sagas, we also got Chainer's Torment. This is probably one of the less powerful of the sagas, I think. So the first 2 lore counters drain for 2, basically. Each opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. Then lore counter number 3 gives you an XX Black Nightmare token, where X is half your life total rounded up, also deals X damage to you. So let's say you're at 20 life, you're going to end up getting a 10/10 after waiting a few turns and playing the 4 mana card, which is definitely big. You're also going to take X damage, which is going to be 10 damage. So I don't know. You can definitely build around this and make a big creature out of it. Is it going to be worth the wait of waiting so many turns, just getting a big thing that's going to die to Fatal Push since it's a token? I don't really see this one as being standard playable, but it's still a cool build-around type card. We also got a couple of reprints and one sweet callback. So Icy Manipulator is back. I have no idea if Icy Manipulator is still good. It was a staple back in the earliest days of Magic. Not sure if 4 mana, pay 1 to tap something is going to get it done these days. I'm definitely excited to try it. Just like stick a mechanized production on it, make a bunch of Icy Manipulators, and Rish and import down all my opponent's lands. Probably not practical, but sounds like a lot of fun. Sarah Angel making a return with Sweet New Art, and Knight of Malice. We saw the white version earlier. Knight of Malice, kind of a callback to Black Knight. Really sweet to see it returning in the set. And those have been our daily Dominaria spoilers for today. Oh my god, so many cards, so many cards. So what do you think? How good is Naban? Can that break into Standard or Modern, or is it just a casual card? How about Shally? Is that going to be a Standard staple? Does Legendary kill it? Speaking of Legendary, what about the Legendary sorceries? Jayas Emulating Inferno, Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, they both seem powerful, but are they going to be too hard to build around? Can we play them in Standard? What about Demon Lord Belzenlock? Is that card going to be Standard playable or just a Commander card? Squeeze and the Goblins and the uncommons and commons. Let me know what you think about all of them in the comments. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.